Hey, welcome back to chapter 5 and tutorial 5, where we follow the Solar2D tutorials that are on their documentation website. If you haven't been here before, please do subscribe to my channel so that you are notified when I publish a new video. So we're going to pick up straight where we left off at the end of chapter 4. This chapter is basically now where we're going to do a whole lot of copy and pasting, because we've got that original file from our code where we started coding everything into one game. Where is it? Main original. So we've got all our code, but we now need to basically break it up and put it in different parts of these other files in order to create this game environment. So that's what we're going to be doing in this chapter. So it's going to be a little bit long-winded, but it's not necessarily complicated. So scene structure, we basically touched on this in the last chapter. Go back and rewatch it, where it creates, shows, hides and destroys a scene and the different parts of it, so that the composer is aware of what's going on and it's acting like God, so it can control and direct like a director in a theatre production. Accessible code, basically we are going to start off now. Now, I made the game.lua file before, so we've got our scene template and made a copy of it, called it game.lua, which is fine, and it's in our Star Explorer. So we did that at the end of the last chapter. So let's get our screen up. So we don't need high scores, we don't need our menu. We're now working with game, and we are working with our main original. So this is where our code now exists, but we need to segment it up and copy and paste it into our scene template living in our game.lua file. Okay, so job number 1, we're going to copy over the physics engine. So I am going to, oh, I can't copy, there we go. So I'm going to cut that out of there, and I'm going to paste it into there. Back. Let's just see where they actually want it to put. Yeah, outside. So remember, this is where the director is barking orders, so that everybody in the scene, regardless whether in the changing rooms, whether they've already been on stage and come off stage, everybody can access the commands and knows what's going on. Okay. We've already followed these commands. However, you may recall that we started that in the main.lua file, so there's no need to copy it again, so that's fine. So if we look back here on our main original, that's already done in our main.file, so we can delete that because it's already been done. Now we need to copy over our object sheet. So we are literally grabbing lines 10 right through to the end of line 47. So I'm going to cut, and I am going to paste. Okay. Again, because everybody inside the scenes might need to use this information because it's all the images, so we don't know what and where it's going to be needed, so we're going to put it outside where the director can control it. Okay, initialize the variables. So let's grab our variables from our main. So we're going to grab all of those, cut, and we're going to go back to our game underneath here. So the first part so far, so good. Okay, and now we're going to do the display groups, main, back and user interface. So from main, we are going to grab those, cut, and we are going to put them in. Hang on. Look what they've done. I see where they're splitting things up. So I was a bit hasty there. So bear with me just one second. Let me go back to our original and undo that. Okay. What they want us to do now is just create these outside. Okay. The main groups outside. So anywhere. So the director is controlling them, but we'll populate them inside a scene in a minute. So they exist, but nothing happens. So these are just literally, I'm going to pull that groups like that, groups. Okay, so it exists, but we'll populate them inside in a moment. That's fine. So game functions. All right, so we need to update our text. So let's take the update text as well. So we're going to leave that up there for a minute. There's our update text. So this is a function. Cut. And I'm going to put it in game. Okay, so we're still outside the actual scene sections themselves. We are where the director is shouting and barking his commands. Right. And we're going to do the same for the next function as well. So back to original. Let's get rid of that. And we are going to take the asteroid function. Put it in the game. And, yeah. And then we are going to, what's we're going to do now? So Now observe the line directly under fire laser. Oh, did I cut and paste that too quickly? No, I didn't. Okay. The ship event listener. Now we don't want the ship event listener to be added just yet, okay? So, but we haven't added it. This is because we want to defer this command until later in the game when we're ready for that action to take place. So as you copy and paste the next few instructions, skip the commands immediately that follow them. So we're not going to copy the event listeners for the moment, okay? And you're going to copy the code from game. So we're basically taking the functions, but we're leaving behind the event listeners. So we've got to make sure we do not add these lines of code. So essentially the remainder of the scene space should be populated as followed. So we need to take the drag ship function, game loop function, restore ship function, on collision function, everything now should, all the functions themselves. So let's go back to original. So I'm going to grab the laser, fire laser, but leaving the event listener behind. So I'm going to cut and I'm going to paste that in here as well. Okay, and then I'm going to go back to main. I'm going to take the drag ship, leave the listener, cut, and I'm going to go back to, so we've got the local asteroid, we've got fire laser, we've got the drag ship. This is a nice little way, when the code gets really long on your screen, it gets a bit crazy. So if you're using Visual Studio, or if you're using another text editor, if it's an actual editor that's designed for coding, it will give you the power to minimize the code. So you can see that the function exists, but without all the blurb on screen. So it sort of just keeps it a little bit tidier and neater for you to know what's going on. Okay, so let's go back to the original. We've got a game loop function to take as well. Cut, paste. Just going to tidy up some of this at the end there. And minimize, so that's done, and I think that is all of them, and then we're down to our event functions there, so that's fine. So we've got, I'm just going to leave this up here now. We've done the status bar hiding already, so we don't need that code. Let's just tidy them up and leave them there for a moment. Restore ship, and on the collision I thought I'd finished, but I thought that was a bit quick of me, so I am wrong screen. Paste that one in there. Got the restore ship, give us some space. And we go back and we've got the on collision. So I'm going to take all of that as well and cut. And we go back to game and in there we go as well. So all our functions are now sitting outside of our scene. Just minimize some of this, makes it look nice and tidy. So that's all good. So this is the beginning of the game now. So we've got our local physics sheet and all the sheet itself so that everybody can use it. We've got all of our functions, and then we've got the main scene sections, and then back. So let's save that. It might cause an error, but it doesn't matter. And then down here we have got the runtime that we needed to leave behind. So let's just double check the 4 of those. Where did it say? Initialize variables. Follow this. Right, so we need to make sure we've got these 4 lines of codes. We've got the fire, laser, drag ship, we've got the game looper, and we've got the collision. So that's great. Okay, so we are good. So we can skip all the way down the page now to creating the scene. Okay. So now we need to actually create the scene for the menu in the previous chapter. Okay, so we have created the background tile and the 2 buttons for this scene. We've created the background ship and the 2 objects. In addition, we've paused the physics engine and actually create these 3 display groups. Right, so let's start with the physics start create and the physics pause. So temporarily pause the engine. Copy. So we are going back into here. Oh, where's my code gone? There we go. In our game, and we are going to temporarily pause. Okay, so somewhere at the top of the screen we started it, but for the moment we're going to pause it. Okay. What is the purpose of this command at this point in the life cycle? Remember that our game scene isn't truly on the screen at this point, and because we don't want the game to start quite yet, we'll immediately pause the physics engine. This allows us to create more objects, assign their physical bodies and position them, do what we need to do, but it won't affect the game being played. Okay. And then when we're ready, we can restart it. Fine. So set up the display groups. Now, if you remember, in our original, we had these 3 lines of code, but what we're doing, we're actually splitting up the code right now. So the variables now exist outside the scene sections, but now we've got to create the new group. So again, we're creating the interface here. So we are going to come down here. We're in the creates, everybody's in the changing rooms, the stage crew are making the props. So we are going to copy all of this to make life easier. Cut, or copy I should say, and go back, and then I'm just going to paste this. Oh, let's indent it, make sure our code is nice and neat. So now we've taken our variable, which can be accessed anywhere in the game because it's outside the scenes, and we're actually going to physically create it as a group, and we're going to insert it into the scene itself. So this is our way of making sure that the composer knows that these 3 layers exist, and actually everything that we're going to do is going to live in one of those 3 layers. But it had to sit inside the creation section, so that again, this is like the back office admin of how we're organizing our scene. Okay, so we are inserting it into the group so that the view of the group scene group can see it. That's fine, and we're using that insert control. That's fine. So as you recall, most Solar2D display objects are valid display object variables as a convenient shortcut to inserting things into the display. That's fine. One of the exceptions is a shortcut. You can't simply supply an inline group. That's why we're actually having to take it as an object. So it's not quite following the same normal rules, but that's why we've just had to create this as we have here. Now, moving back into our load the background. So let's copy this and go back to our scene, or I should say really, we should copy it from here. So we're going to cut this out, and we're going to put this now down here in our create section. So let's just tidy this up a bit. Because the background isn't going to be referred to at any other part of our game, once it's loaded and created, we can pretty much forget about it. So we don't need to give access to the variable background to any other aspect of our game. So keeping things neat and tidy and locally within this environment, we've got the word local preceding the variable here inside the create function. All right. If we needed to access the background from something inside show, then we would have had to create this variable up here so it could have been accessed by the entire game. Okay, so what else do they want us to do? Now, if you look at ship down here, that has been created elsewhere, so we don't need to use the word local. So let's go to our game and move that over now. Where's our code gone? Okay, so in main here, we are going to grab our ship, we're going to cut, and we're going to go to game, and we're going to build that now. That's great. Remember, ship needs to be accessed by the entire game. So somewhere we have, where have we gone? We have initialized our variables, load ship. Oh, where has it gone? We'll have a look and check on that in a second. Did I miss to copy it over? Let's just have a look where it says initialize variables, make sure I didn't, oh look, I've missed a couple off. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure, this is my bad, just going to make sure that those variables were actually initialized at the top of the screen. So if you've just followed me exactly, just go and do a quick double check for yourself now as well. So underneath that, we are going to, let me just move this down so I can just quickly compare what I've already done. Let's quickly fix. So we've got live scores, that bit's already done, that's cool. We didn't do the asteroids, or we did do the asteroids table, but we hadn't done, oh, it was only the ship we were missing. Okay, but it wasn't too bad. It was just a good job we just quickly double checked that. Okay, for some reason it looked like I'd actually commented it out, but there we go, our local ship. So because this variable lives outside the main composer area of the scenes and director can access it, it means that we can build it here, but we're now going to be able to access it in all these other sections down here. That's great. So we are going to go back down to where we said ship, display, there's the ship, and then we need to also do the lives as well. So let's copy our main.lua, and there's our live. So almost all of our code has now gone. Cut and paste. That's cool. Let's just tidy up our lines. That's done, and then I'm going to delete that because we've now covered that already, and this code we don't need. So we're literally down to the event listeners. So we're doing really well. So I'm going to save, just where we are at the moment, just to make sure everything's okay. Right. So unlike the background, we create these objects, 3 objects. We're going to use the forward references. So that's the terminology by creating it outside of the main scenes. Okay, ship, lives, text and score. We include earlier in the scene accessible code. This is because other functions need to know about these objects and run, whereby the background only it needs to be created and then it's job done. Notice that we're still inserting objects into their proper display groups, so nothing about how and where things live in our layers are going to be affected. That's fine. This correct procedure, follow this correct procedure because this is where the groups are inserted into the scene view. So it's just basically nothing what we've done so far in our previous chapters is being changed, other than the fact that we split it up how we were populating the main groups inside the create, and we've just literally brought all our functions over and we've done our creation. You know, the actors are being made into their costumes in the create phase of our game. Right, moving onward. Remember now that we need to defer the top and attach event listeners, okay, make them available. This is why don't they exist yet? Well, that's because ship does exist, but now we need to add the listener to it. So now that we have got everything created and we're ready for it, we're going to grab the ship event listener for tapping for fire and touching or dragging the ship across the screen. So let's grab those 2 lines of code, cut and paste, and we're going to paste it underneath. So before we finish doing anything in our create section, now and only now do we want to add these event listeners. Now I would actually argue, when I design code, I would actually have done that in the will phase, because they're literally, everything's ready and it's just literally like they would have, maybe the actor needed to have a glass of water on stage. Well, he doesn't want to walk around the glass of water in the changing room because he's going to need it in half an hour when he's on stage. So to me, that would be this action right now of adding the event listener. I personally would have put this in, he will be on stage in just a second. So it's then like the stage hand behind the scene, the actors on the stage behind the curtain, the stage hand runs up, gives him that glass of water. So when he walks on stage, he's now prepared, instead of having to force him carrying it all the way through the corridors to get there. So I hope that metaphor is kind of working for you. I am going to carry on doing what they're saying on the tutorial, but I just want you to be aware this is when you start to control your own code instead of just simply following instructions on others. It's when you start to question why you do things and is there actually a better way of doing it. But that's for another day. Okay, so that's it. Our initial scene objects will now be created, albeit off screen, immediately before the composer proceeds to the next function and starts to show things. So we're going to go into showing the scene. Now, if you remember, we've still got, let me just save everything as a nice place. We've still got these 2 things still to copy over. So notice that the scene temporarily already contains the will show and the did show. So we need to pay attention now that whatever we do from this moment forward is going to live in these 2 sections. It's either about to be prepared to be shown, as in it's stood behind the curtain, or the curtain's been pulled back and it's now on stage. Okay. Now that you understand this concept, simply paste the code from the original cause. So this is where we get those 2 lines that we're still missing from the game. We're basically going to put them and we're going to restart. So we're going to restart the engine. I'm going to copy it from here because I'm quick and lazy. Okay, and we are going to go into the did there, and that means now we're going to, obviously we've just added the up here somewhere we did the pause, so we've restarted, so that's what we're doing here. So now that we're on stage, we want to start the game, so that makes sense. And these 2 last lines of code that we had to deal with, which was the game looper line and the collision line, they are now done and dusted with. So we've just added them in here. So there's the collision and we've just put them in the other order. That's fine. So now main.lua is never needed again because we have now split the code up and it now lives in other sections of our game or our app. Okay, so we restart the physics engine, we start the collision detection, and we start the game loop with our timer. So basically, we are still waiting that ½ second before everything. So if you think we've just done this as a linear process, we've created everything, everything's gone to the back of the stage, the curtain's been pulled back, we've started the game engine, and the game is now playing. So let's make sure this is saved and see what's going on our game. And obviously, we can play. Look, there are our buttons, they're listening. We've hit play and now we're in the game and we can still fire and shoot, drag and right. So we've now got a transition phase like you would, like, I think of it as like an arcade game. If you are old enough to know what I'm talking about, your parents definitely will be. But back in the day, you know, Starship or Space Invaders is essentially what we are creating here. This is exactly what would have happened. So you'd have had the menu screen where you'd have seen the scores of all the other previous players. You want to get to the top of the screen and away you go. So there we go, I'm playing the game nicely. Okay, so what we got to do now? Hiding the scene. Okay, so maybe we need to transition to the high scores, for example. So we need to start tidying up our game. Okay, so we're in the section now where I need to hide the scene. So if you remember on our game, where are we? Here. Okay, we can continue playing. Look, we're stuck. You know, our starship's been killed. We've got no lives left, but we can't restart the game. So we need to do some tidying up now of being able to end this scene and basically, you know, restart another game should we wish to. So that's basically what's being explained here. And again, if we go back to our code, we are in the hiding section here now. There is two phases again. We've got it will be hidden from screen, and then it did get hidden from screen. Okay, so what do they want us to do? First of all, we've got to end the game looper. Okay, the timer that's basically making us continue play all the time. So we are about to remove the game from the screen. So in the will be hidden phase, so there's the hidden, we are going to put the timer.cancel it so it doesn't exist anymore. And then down here in it did get hidden, we're going to do a runtime, remove the event listener from the collision detection to stop that happening, and we're going to pause the physics engine again. Okay, so we will, so obviously it's not on screen, just like we paused it to start with, so we're pausing and starting and stopping and so on. Okay, so all is good there. Let's hit save. Stop the game, that's fine, hide the scene. Right, so event link up. Now we need to control how when we die and we're on no lives, it closes things. So our scene hide function is now complete, but we need to take a few final steps to actually get this to call. Logically, a scene will never be hidden unless we intentionally cause to hide it. And this occurs when you tell the composer to do a different scene. So go to scene. So we need to basically say, right, game's ended, finish, go back to the menu. All right. In our game, we want to return to the menu, or eventually we go to the high score scene when we create it. When the player dies and has no remaining lives, so this condition has already been accounted for, but as we've just demonstrated, it's not happening, so we now need to make it happen. So in our game, we're going to find our collision function. Okay, so let's go and find our collision function. It's going to be up the top here somewhere. In fact, control find, as you can see now it's got up here, and then I can type on collision. There we go, and it's highlighted it, and now I can expand it. So we're going to obviously tweak this code here right now. So in this, we've got our lives, so it's going to deduct one life and keep counting, which is we know works, and then it's going to reprint it to the screen, which we know works. That's all good. So we're going to add in now an if statement to make a decision, so we can test constantly the status of our game. So here we are, update our lives, and we're going to add in if our lives equal 0, then and only then do we remove the ship. That's great. Else the ship is it's alpha, means it's transparent, and then we delay with another 1,000 seconds, like 1 second, 1,000 milliseconds. Okay, and then we call the function restore ship, copy find. There's the restore ship, and it's saying I've got 2 to 3 instances, and I can go back up and then read that function if I want to. Okay. All right, now directly below, we're going to remove the ship. We're going to change, say, now directly below the display dot remove ship. Okay, we are going to add the following command. So we're going to give it another command. And then we're going to add into the game. So copy. So in here, we've got remove ship. If there are no lives, we're then going to create a timer where we're going to wait 2 seconds, and then we're going to call a function called end game. Well, obviously end game doesn't exist, so we now have to write it, and that means we're going to have to put it back up the top. Now, if you notice the order of things, we've talked about this before, we're going to place it above the on collision function. So copy, we'll talk through that in a second. Let's go back up here. So in here, we've got to squeeze in the space, so it's underneath the restore ship but above the on collision. We've got an end game function which basically says go to the composer, or this godly thing that's controlling the whole entire environment. We're going to switch back to the menu screen after 8 seconds, and we're doing a nice fade out from that screen, that scene to the next scene. So it's got a nice, instead of it being harsh, we're going to fade over 0.8 seconds. Okay, so we're going to hit save, and then what else does it ask us to do? And then now this simply returns the menu, and we should be good. So let's see this in action. So we are going to refresh the game. We can test that that's happening. So let's have a look at our composer. It's busy, so let's just clear this. I'm going to click over here, and then I'm going to do Control R on my keyboard, or you can do a relaunch. You can see the game's relaunched. We're on the menu. We've done that. That's correct. We should put actually a play, but we can see here we're playing. So let's kill ourselves 3 times. In fact, I'll get a couple of scores just for the sake of it. There we go. So we've hit 3 asteroids. This one's coming for us, so killing us once. Okay, we're going to reappear over 4 seconds. We need to be killed again. There we go. Down to 1 life, we're reappearing, and we should be killed again. There we go, we've got no lives. And now we have faded out, and we have faded back to the menu. So that end game scenario has just occurred. That's brilliant. So everything so far is working just as we want it to do. Okay, so now we got to do a cleanup. Now remember, because this has happened to us visually as a human looking and interacting with the game, behind the scenes in memory, all sorts of things have had to happen. And because we've moved away from the game, we're back on that main menu page. We need to tidy up our admin, shall we say. So hopefully players will want to play the game again, and then they can click the play button and around the world they go. The composer catches scenes in memory to save processing power when the scene is revisited. So even though it's hidden at this point, the game scene remains basically as you left it. If you play the game again, the scene comes back into view and the new asteroids begin spawning, but unfortunately this causes some problems. The asteroids from the previous game will still be there. Uh-oh. And your previous score will still be there. Uh-oh. And the ship won't be showing because as far as that scene's concerned, it was destroyed. So we need to do a complete hard cleanup to make sure the environment is reset. Depending on the game, cleaning up the scene, restart fresh can involve some effort. This game, we would need to undo some of the things that we did in the create, as well as remove the references to the old asteroids contained in the asteroids table. We would also need to reset the scores, reset the lives, and turn on the ship's visibility. None of this is exceptionally complicated, but let's face it, we wouldn't want to conveniently do this. There must be an easier way to reset the scene, okay? Fortunately, there is one. We can call composer remove scene game. So I'm going to hit copy there. Okay, essentially this command removes and destroys the game.lua file scene. So it never existed and the composer no longer knows anything about the game.lua file. By doing so, you lose the caching benefit mentioned above, but for most of the scenes, it's not worth the effort to program the reset in each scene or each thing individually. And when you get good at programming, there is other ways to store things like the score in the device memory so it can be accessed long term. So if you turn the app off, close the game down or the mobile device down, when you restart the mobile device and power it back up, it will pull from memory. So it's a bit like saving a file on your computer. You can save things to device memory. So there are ways to get around that. That's beyond the scope of this particular tutorial series, but there is, we're only on the starting line here at the moment learning these things. With this simplified approach, let's modify our scene hide. So we're going to add in that one line of code there where we completely remove the scene. And if you look, we're in the hide section and we're in the did, so it did remove everything, and it's the last line of code that we're adding. So there's our code going down here to our scenes. There's our hide, and it's our third line of code. So job done. Now, this addition should be clear. We simply cause the composer to basically delete the game in the scene phase hiding. So it did hide, and now we can move it. Time to test our changes. Save the modified game, relaunch it in the simulator. Now you should be able to play the game repeatedly, and it will give us a clean reset each time. So let's give that a quick whirl. Oh, hang on, I didn't refresh. So play. Got to kill ourselves 4 times, so it will take just a few seconds, and then they're going to give us some extra credit for transition effects. So we still never fixed the reason why all our asteroids look the same, but we can go and do that in another chapter when we tidy up things at the very end. We're down to 1 life, and oh, come on, kill me. There we go. So we should fade out, back, play, 3 lives, 0 score, away we go. So job done there. Okay, so earlier in this chapter you learned about transition effects, okay, as you move from one scene to the next. If you recall, the game is only accessed by the play button, so we'll modify that file. Okay, so we need to go back into menu, and then we need to go to the go to game function. Okay, and we're going to add in just transition effects, so it's not such a quick hard transition. So if we do it now, look, when I hit the play button it jumps, okay, but what we're going to do is we're going to give it that crossfade. So let's go back into here. So where are we? Menu. We're going to go to that button where it says go to scene. There's the button creation. Where? Oh, it's the functions up here, sorry. So if you look at the 2, so play, you can see that the first part of the game, the code is the same, but all we're doing in as a second parameter in the curly brackets is adding 2 bits of information. Over 0.8 seconds, add a crossfade. So we're going to delete that and replace it. And I think we're going to do the same on the next line here. So, and again, so all I'm going to do is copy that up to the comma, and there we go, save. So now, instead of that hard, we should fade. So let me just do a refresh and fade. We fade in nicely, and then we're going to die. That's great. Okay, I'll leave that to do its thing for a second. So that's our extras scores. So there we are, chapter concepts. We can learn more about what's going on, and now we're going to go and create our high scores in our next chapter. So if you enjoyed this, please do subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you on chapter 6 or tutorial 6 in just a moment.